Hello there, lovely folks of YouTube. Bren here. So I wanted to talk about a little plant, and I know I have my blueberry in my face a little bit, but it's okay. I wanted to talk about a plant that anyone, if you're in the northern hemisphere, probably has access to, regardless of whether you have a garden or not. And even if you do have a garden, you probably didn't plant this plant, yet you still have it. It is this little guy right here, the dandelion. There is no need to cultivate this plant. It is a weed. It grows everywhere. It is very prevalent. However, if you did want to grow it, it's very easy to sow, and I'm sure you know where to find the seeds. Just go out anywhere and find a dandelion seed pod. If you wanted to harvest the root of the dandelion, it is a little easier if you put it into tilled ground, just because the ground will be softer and it's easier to pull the roots, but you really don't need to. You can get this plant anywhere, and you can find it anywhere, and I have it all over my yard. Like, I had a hard time choosing where to film this because there were so many options. I was just like, all right, we're gonna do it here. The name of this plant, dandelion, it comes from the French dandelion, which means lion's tooth. Let me show you here. So you can see the leaf of the dandelion is said to resemble a lion's jaw, which is where it gets its name. Interestingly enough, that is not the name of the dandelion in French. The French name of dandelion is pissenlits, which basically means piss the bed. In fact, one of the folk names in English is sometimes called wet the beds, or something along those lines, which is kind of a reference to its old medicinal use as a diuretic. This is a perennial plant. It will constantly regrow in the spot where its taproot is, so you can continually harvest the leaves or the flowers if that's what you want to do. But of course, if you dig out the root, then it's not going to regrow in that place. But there'll be plenty others elsewhere, so it's not an issue. I do want to warn you, there are some other plants that do look similar to the dandelion in that they have those bright yellow flowers and the toothed leaves like the dandelion, but they're not the same. The dandelion tends to have the really smooth, deeply cut leaves, sometimes with the extra teeth on the teeth. Other plants tend to be more furry, so just, keep an eye out and make sure that you're actually harvesting the real thing. And the reason, of course, is that dandelions, the real deal, is edible. All parts of this plant are edible. Others not so much, but dandelion is edible. However, it tends to be bitter. The bitterness increases with time. So once your dandelion has actually started blooming, it's actually too bitter, the leaves, to really be palatable. You could still eat them. It's not going to hurt you. It's just that most people find them distasteful. Like this leaf right here is probably going to be really bitter. It has that milky white sap, of course, which is where most of the bitter compounds are. But yes, you can make salads from the leaves. A lot of people historically would make tea from the leaves as well. The roots can also be dug up. They tend to be roasted and then ground like coffee, and then you make a sort of a dandelion coffee, they call it, but it's really a tea from the roots as well. And then of course the flowers. Very famous dandelion wine is one of the things that you can make from the flowers, where they would take the flowers of the dandelion, strip off most of these green parts, and then kind of make an infusion with that, and then add sugar and ferment it, and that was your dandelion wine. Really famous spring tonic. You can also make fritters, where you take the dandelion flowers and you dip them in batter and fry them, which is really good. So yes, lots of things you can do edible with these plants. This flower is one of the earliest harbingers of spring that we have. It's one of the first flowers that open up. Because of that, it is a very important pollen source for our pollinators, so that's another reason not to spray weed killer on your dandelions. So let's talk about some of the magical association with this plant. Dandelion is associated with the planet Jupiter and the element of air. Anybody who's ever seen a dandelion seed head knows why it's associated with air. And then Jupiter, of course, is the planet of expansion and growth. So yes, that's another reason, because it spreads everywhere. So yes. The flowers may also, just because of their color and appearance, have a solar association with them, so you can kind of use them for that sort of solar aspect as well, of just sort of like success and things of that nature that the solar aspect governs. So these plants have a very long history with uses in divination. Just about everybody I know has some sort of folklore that they learned as a child for blowing the seed heads, whether it be like you could blow the seed heads to tell the time, or blow the seed heads to make a wish. I know what I learned as a child is that you could blow the seed heads to make a wish, but your wish would only come true if all of the seeds blew off. So we were always very careful when we picked up our dandelions to make sure that we got ones that were as full and as ready to go as possible, because sometimes when they're still a little underripe, some of those seeds don't come off. So yeah, it was a thing when I was a child. So just about everybody has some sort of story about that. So yes, divination, wish fulfillment, these are all things that you can use the dandelion for, particularly the seed heads. The tea made from the leaves, and especially the roots, can be used to enhance psychic ability. That taproot kind of goes all the way into the earth, so it's sort of a metaphor for, you know, us tapping into our subconscious the same way that that root taps into the underworld. So, but yeah. It's a very prolific, very easy to find plant, and it's one that anybody can use. So go out there and get some dandelions. All right. Hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.